Good morning. Thank you all for visiting with us today. Welcome to Bible Study with Betty and Andre. Today we'll be continuing our studies from the book of Zechariah. Today we're in chapter 9. And in this chapter we'll be looking at the first and the second coming of Christ. And we look at the first coming. Jesus came as the suffering servant. But in the second coming, the revelation, he will come as the conquering king. He's king in his earthly ministry, but he operates as the suffering servant paying our sin debt. But as the conquering king, he will rule over the entire earth, the heaven and the earth, at his second coming. And his second coming has two stages. The first stage is the rapture, and the second stage is the revelation, when God pours out his wrath upon the world system led by Satan and all of those who follow Satan. And so in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 1, we begin reading at verse 1. The burden of the word of the Lord in the land of Hadrach and Damascus shall be the rest thereof, when the eyes of man, as of all the tribes of Israel, shall be toward the Lord. And so God is showing Zechariah that in the Middle East, all the surrounding cities of Palestine will be judged based upon whether or not their eyes, like Israel, is toward the Lord. Verse 2, and Hamath also shall border thereby, Tyrus and Zidon, though it be very wise. And that's talking about the world system as depicted as Mystery Babylon, the great harlot. It is the commercial center of the world. Because verse 3 says, and Tyrus did build herself a stronghold, and heaped up silver as the dust, and fine gold as the mire of the streets. There'll be the rich getting rich, and the poor getting poorer in these last days. Verse 4. Behold, the Lord will cast her out, that is this world system, and he will smite her power in the sea, and she shall be devoured with fire. And that's the destruction of this world system led by Antichrist through Satan. Verse 5. Askelon shall see it and fear. This is talking about the Philistines, who is the enemy of God's people. So verse 5, Askelon shall see it and fear. Gaza also shall see it and be very sorrowful, and Ekron. For her expectation or her confidence shall be ashamed, and the king shall perish from Gaza, and Askelon shall not be inhabited. It is the wicked nations or the goat nations that follow after the devil. Verse 6, and a bastard shall dwell in Ashdod, or an unbeliever. This word bastard means unbeliever. It is not talking about children who are born out of wedlock. So reading verse 6 again. and a bastard shall dwell in Ashdod, and I will cut off the pride of the Philistines. Verse 7, and I will take away his blood out of his mouth, and his abominations from between his teeth, the blasphemies. But he that remaineth, even he, shall be for our God, and shall be as a governor in Judah, and Ekron as a Jebusite. So during the tribulation period, those nations that befriend and help Israel shall be saved, and they shall be for our God. Verse 8, and I will, this is God speaking, and I will encamp about mine house because of the army, because of him that passeth by, and because of him that returneth. And no oppressor shall pass through them any more. For now have I seen with mine eyes. And so God is saying that Israel and Jerusalem is going to be restored. And there will be no oppressor because Satan will be in the pit. Now we have the presentation of Christ as King in his first advent when he rides into Jerusalem on the ass, the colt, the foal of an ass. And it says in verse 9, rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, thy king, talking about Jesus, cometh unto thee. He is just and having salvation, lowly and riding upon an ass, and upon a colt, the foal of an ass. And the ass is symbolic of peace, and the colt is symbolic of burden bearer. So even though Jesus is king, he first has to pay the sin debt as recorded in the Gospels. And now we'll look at the future deliverance of Judah, Ephraim, and the worldwide kingdom. Verse 10, and I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim, and the horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow shall be cut off, and he, that is me the king, shall speak peace unto the heathen, or unto the nations. And his dominion shall be from sea even to sea, and from the river even unto the ends of the earth. And this is when Christ rules over the nations and Israel in the kingdom. Verse 11, as for thee also, by the blood of thy covenant I had set forth thy prisoners out of the pit wherein is no water. And so in Luke 4:18, Jesus speaks of his ministry in setting the captives free and letting the prisoners out of their prison house. And it would be through his redemptive work. And so verse 12 says, turn ye to the stronghold. This is an invitation and a warning. Because back in verse 1, it says, the burden of the word of the Lord. When the Bible speaks of a burden to a distinct people, is speaking and giving warning of a coming judgment. But God gives man opportunity to repent. And so when it says in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 12, turn ye to the stronghold, That's the way of Jesus saying, "Come to me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden. So turn you to the stronghold, ye prisoners of hope. Even today do I declare that I will render double unto thee." And he says, this is King Jesus saying, "When I have bent Judah for me, filled the bowl with Ephraim, and raised up thy son, O Zion, thy sons, O Zion, against thy sons, O Greece, and made thee as a sword of a mighty man." So when God has finished and consummated his work for the nation Israel, the church will be raised up to reign over the Israel and the sheep nations in the new earth. Verse 14. "And the Lord shall be seen over them, and his arrow shall go forth as the lightning. And the Lord shall blow the trumpet, and shall go with whirlwinds of the south." Verse 15. "The Lord of hosts shall defend them, and they shall devour and subdue with slingstones, and they shall drink and make a noise as through wine. And they shall be filled like bowls, and as the corners of the altar." And that's when the land will flow with milk and honey in the kingdom age. Verse 16. "And the Lord their God shall save them in that day as the flock of his people, but they shall be as the stones of a crown, lifted up as an ensign or as a banner upon his land." Verse 17. "For how great is God's goodness, and how great is his beauty. Corn shall make the young men cheerful, and new wine the maids." And the corn speaks of Jesus as the bread of life, the life giver, and his precious blood is the wine is symbolic of the precious blood that he shed in order to deliver the world out of sin into the righteousness of God. And so this chapter 9 of Zechariah is looking at the first and second coming of Jesus, and how Jesus will destroy Satan out of the world and the world system, so that he can bring deliverance to the nation Israel and the peoples of the land that follow the Lord at the end of the tribulation period and into the kingdom. So many of these books of the Bible point forward to his first coming and his second coming. And I look forward to getting into the next chapters as we come to nearing an end of the book of Zechariah. So thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week, and you all keep us in your prayers, and you're in our prayers. And thank you for being encouraging and supportive of this ministry. Andre and I thank you so very much. So you all have a great day and a great week. Bye.